Welcome back to the show. Joining me are Maurice Clark and also Ollie Ward. They're both members of Sacred Intent, a group here, based here in Indianapolis. I don't want to say local because these guys, I think, have the potential to just do some great things, not just across the country, but throughout the world. I really do, and I'm not just saying that. Before we get too into the music and what you guys do, explain how Sacred Intent came about. Either one of you guys.
Well, it's kind of a mixture of things, but to make it quick, some of us been friends since high school, went to the same high school, like, you know, some of the guys went to Tech. Some of them went to college, like he's from Vegas, so he came down to college, man, through college. And some of us was, you know, we used to do music in the past, used to have kind of music projects that we met, Gino with Daria. But we were acquainted with each other.
Right.
But we didn't get to come to know each other like kindred spirits until we all attended the same church. That's Great Light Church, Christian Institute of Arts. And through that, that's when kind of like we was in that transition period, I guess you could say, sometimes riding on that fence, still clubbing, still doing this, still doing that, kind of going back and forth. And that's when, like I mentioned earlier, God was trying to say, nah, that's still above me.
Right.
You know, your talents, your music, your rap, your hip hop, your whatever, you know, your fornication, all this is above me. We all were going through it.
Right.
And while we were actually trying to succeed and submit to these convictions, we kind of, it's not like it happened like this, but you kind of look up and you're like, man, I got these brothers that's in the same struggle with me, finding myself spending more time talking to them, spending myself time reading the words. Man, I just don't understand this. Or is it saying what I really think it's saying?
Right.
Well, no, it's saying what it's saying. It's just
Right.
hard to stop doing these things or submit to that. So we became real brothers, I could say, real kindred spirits. And through that, that's when we started doing kind of musical things for like weddings and, you know, which is kind of surprising to say, but funerals. A lot of people would say, you know, your music is appropriate for that. You know, we'd sing here and there. And our pastor kind of noticed that. And
he named you guys.
He named us, you know. So he named us in the sense of saying, he knows sometimes the tension in sometimes traditional churches where, you know, you have kind of a different look or a different sound that it's the church's job to try to protect. It is the church's job, so it wasn't a judgment thing. It was one of those things saying, well, you have to, you guys have a sacred intent behind, and he said intentions.
Right.
But, you know, it's kind of a long name.
Right.
You know? So he was like, you know, sacred intent, you know, kind of came out of that.
Right.
So that's kind of how we got into music.
That's cool. I know, Maurice, one of the group's mottos is changing words, images, and perceptions through music. Explain how you guys do this through your music.
Okay. Well, first I kind of touch on where it came from, and it kind of ties to what Ollie was saying, and that's rooted in our church dialogues and things at Great Light. And so that's kind of the motto that our church is established on, is living Christ-transformed lives, change words, change images, change perceptions. And so what we feel like our role is taking that message and using music as the vehicle. And I guess the ways it comes out is in a real conventional sense through the lyrics, really talking about our lives, how they were, showing that transformation from the lives that we lived to the lives that we now live. Our opportunity to kind of build relationships through the different venues that we have, going to different youth centers and different programs. And so in a small way, we're just beginning to really kind of operate in that sense of really affecting and touching people. So
that's cool. One of the things, when I first heard your CD, one of the things that I instantly liked about it was that it, and I hope I don't offend you guys, it didn't sound too churchy, too gospel, you know, like the tradition. It's certainly not, you know, someone's grandmother's definition of gospel music. And I think, you know, I think that's kind of good because it opens people up who may typically close out that genre of music. It opens them up to listen to it and really listen to the words. So, like, if I didn't know the history behind the group, I wouldn't associate you with gospel. I would just associate it with just being really deep, profound, spiritual music. So, was that kind of the intent behind, you know, the group and you guys, you know, really finding your niche and your sound and everything to appeal to that?
Well, I think it's more of a work in progress in the sense of, you know, we have a different generation, and we live in this generation, and that's what our pastor used to drill into us. It's like, look, why are you born now? Why are you born in this age? You know, why are you born in this time period? And it's for a reason. So for us, it's like one thing that we've learned and we definitely want to focus on more is that, see, gospel means the good news. And in our generation and the generation coming up, you know, gospel doesn't mean scripture, or when you hear the word gospel, you don't think of scripture, you don't think about Christ, you don't think about necessarily the message. You think about a sound, a style.
Right.
When you hear gospel music, you automatically think of, you know, what it sounds like. And for us, we grew up with hip hop, we grew up with soul, we grew up neo soul, we grew up with, you know, R&B, we grew up with traditional gospel hymns. We grew up with all these things, and it's like those things influence us, but the only thing that drives us is Christ's message. So that's what makes our music gospel, but not because of a particular sound. And hopefully we can show that, you know, our generation that gospel music, you're not gospel music because you have a traditional organ or some sound in it or some upbeat tempo or something. And let's not get it twisted, people do not necessarily appeal to gospel music mostly because of the message, not because of the sound. Because the church is like the building block of lots of famous people's singing, a lot of people's musical talent was kind of girded up from the grassroots of the church. So it's not that we dislike the sound, because everybody can have preferences. That's fine, but it's really kind of the history of, well, you know, I'm not really agreeing with this opinion or this demand in my life, you know. So.